afternoon, everybody. I'd like to take, this is loud. I'd like to take one collective breath before I get started. So if we could just inhale, let it out. I give thanks, I give thanks, I give thanks. I'm gonna start off with my hallelujahs, because I would not be here if I wasn't called number one. And number two, if it wasn't by the grace of God and an amazing community that got behind me. I call my place the house that the people built. I'm the first Black woman-owned dispensary to open up in Los Angeles. You know, and I don't say that for bragging rights. I say that to show that it can be done. I stand here before you as a single mother of 3 daughters, Black women. We know we don't have no options to quit. And so the story that I'm gonna tell you is about how you gotta keep going, how you can't stop. When they say legacy, and I came from legacy, I'd say I have a really unique story that even more so than legacy, because you have to understand the differentiation. There's only 2. The legislators don't care about no legacy. They don't want to see y'all, us, up in here, right? Because we bring the culture and what cannabis is all about. We bring a historical context. We bring something greater, especially when you come up out of these hoods. We bring legacy. And so when I looked at the definition of legacy, because I did not want to misrepresent myself. So you're gonna hear my story and I'll let you be the judge. But I would dig even deeper into the sister that spoke earlier about social justice. We must not forget about the mothers and the fathers, the sisters, the brothers, the sons, the daughters, the aunts and the uncles whose blood has run through our hoods and our streets, who are still incarcerated to this date, whose children were left without mothers and fathers. We gotta understand that what we're riding on in this cannabis industry, there was a legacy market before there was an industry, and commerce was exchanged, especially with Black and brown people. That's how we maintained our households when our brothers and our fathers couldn't get no jobs. And we were incarcerated at a disproportionate rate, and the collateral damage is legacy. That's legacy. And so when we speak about this new burgeoning cannabis industry and who's a part of it, I'm gonna let y'all know it's a battle. Black and brown people up in here, those who qualify for social equity and those who want to support and be allies. We have a completely different path than the normal cannabis licensing path. And it is up to us to use our abilities to work cooperatively, because we got enough legacy and history from Marcus Garvey to Black Wall Street. We know about cooperative economics. And when we were locked out and we couldn't read and write and we weren't taught how to read and write, we figured it out. And so we got to take off the I'm too busy, I can't do it, and understand the historical implications of this moment in time that we're in, because it is legacy, and we got to harvest that legacy, y'all. So now, so I'm gonna go to my great humble beginnings, 2007, take y'all way back. So when we talk about legacy in the normal sense that we hear it nowadays and all throughout this conference, we're talking about people who were selling on the illicit side before now that it's legal. That's considered legacy, and I did. In 2007, I took my mother's recipe. To all of us, that's one thing I want to know. We all got a brand somewhere up in our family, up in our grandmother's kitchen, up in our mama's kitchen. Somewhere there are recipes that are already together. You have the foundation of a brand, and you see I put it on here, proof of concept. That's the number one thing you have to do before you start looking for investors, before you start figuring out if you want to give up your life to move into this area. You got to have proof of concept. And it doesn't take a long time to develop it, but you got to make sure that you know that you're focused and that you're going to commit. As I said, I'm a single mother of 3. So you're talking about a 16-year-old and an 11-year-old. My oldest is out of the house, but having to do all that and work and provide for them and do this, if I can do it, there are no excuses, y'all. No excuses. So I took my mother's recipe. It was a chlorophyll water that healed my eldest daughter of asthma when she was young. It was sweetened with agave. We called it Heaven's Lemonade. I was selling it in farmers markets, like back in the day, the record label selling it out of the back of your car. That's what I did. And in 2007, I went into some medical marijuana dispensaries in LA. Back then they were legal, kinda. So I was going into these dispensaries. I was like, it's a green drink. It's not infused, but it's a green drink. It goes with dispensaries. And I went in there, knocked on doors, didn't see nobody that looked like me. None of the owners, until one day I ran up on Virgil Grant. He's the first Black-owned dispensary in LA from back in the day. Always got to give props to the pioneers. And I knocked on his doors. And aside from being a pioneer, he showed what is so important, cooperative economics. Because I knocked on his door and asked, could I sell the drink? Number one, he said, yes, you can come on my show. Then he said, hey, I got this hash water in the back. We make hash. I got all these 5-gallon containers of hash water. Why don't you try infusing it in your drink? And hence, chronic tonic. Virgil supplied me all of the water that I needed, the infused water. He paid for my packaging. And so when we talk about opportunities, let's look who's around us, y'all. We do not have to rely on these big companies that are coming in and saying that you don't have the capital or the know-how to do it yourself. We have resources among us. Let's start tapping in. So that's when I launched Chronic Tonic. In 2008, a year later, I'm in more farmers markets. I'm in 3 dispensaries. And I go into Whole Foods. And I say, all these people in the farmers markets are asking about my mom's drink, non-infused. I said, would you try it out? And lo and behold, at that moment, they said I was a first to market product, and I got approved in Whole Foods in 2008. So now, this was a time that I learned something very valuable, supply and demand. Because they say it's a good problem to have if you can't meet the demand, if you have so many people ordering it, and I beg to differ. I beg to differ. And so I made a decision at that point to shelf Chronic Tonic and pursue a whole new business venture in the food and beverage industry. Didn't have any idea about rules and regulations, didn't know you had to go to the health department, didn't know you had to go to the state department to get certificates. It's the same process we have to go through with what we're dealing with now in cannabis. 2017, I'm now in 240 stores in the Western region. I have a national distributor. I thought that was gonna be good too, y'all. When we really start getting into business, and mind you, I'm learning as I'm going, okay? I moved over to the food and beverage industry, quite like everyone coming to cannabis had no clue. Tapped into resources, the business development centers, got financial help, got legal assistance, but nobody was ever in the food and beverage industry, and that's very important of who you're talking to and the things that they're telling you and what you need to learn. And so in 2017, I was in all these stores. I was looking at my checks that were coming back. I felt like I was an employee for Whole Foods. They cut my profit margins down, the distributors, I'm working hard, getting these small checks. And then I saw this brand new opportunity to reinvent guerrilla life. 2017, the city of Los Angeles announces that they're going to legalize recreational cannabis. And in January 2018, it's gonna open. So I thought we had a 9-month window. I'm going for broke. Went inactive on the shelves of Whole Foods, went inactive with my distributor. I did all things cannabis, which I encourage. You don't gotta stop what you're doing in the daytime like I did, but it is important. You have to be all things cannabis, and you can see the list of all of the things that now I understand when I had to put this together, all of the different things that were so important to do, but they were all so important to do. At every last one of these meetings, they tell you something that is very strategic about you opening up your business. They tell you something that's very strategic that you need to know about not opening up a business. You need to go to it. So we went, first of all, study your local and your state regulations. And I mean study. We had study groups that went to Denny's, a couple other black women, and we printed it out in binders, and we just read the regulations 3 and 4 times until we understood them. We picked them apart. You got to go to your city council meetings. There's planning and land use meetings, business and finance committees. You need to do a search on your city's website and your state website. You can get on email searches. They'll send you and notify you for all things cannabis. If you can't go to the meeting, go back and look at the recordings. Go and read the minutes. Let me tell y'all, Black people in particular, we know that we always have to be a step above and do more. And the only way that we will have a lion's share of this market is if we do more, and the heart of that is government relations. And so I did not know that. I did not know, on top of being an entrepreneur, that I had to be a director of government relations and a director of community relations, because you also need the neighborhood where you're gonna open to give you some approvals. You don't wanna show up by the time you get your license and then make a presentation. You gotta put that work in now, today, not when it comes online, not when the regulations hit. If you start and then it's too late. It's already late. This folks already over here, the real estate's going, they locking up people, it's late. So I tell you, the way that we get our advantage is to put on that hat of being our director of government relations. So the lessons that I learned that are really critical, that I just want to reiterate: read the agendas, read the archived minutes, watch the recordings, take notes, take cliff notes, and do it collectively, y'all. We got to form study groups. When I can't be there, she's going to be there. When she can't be there, someone else is. We shared information. We created an action network amongst ourselves. It started with 5 people, and it grew over to 250 people just by people constantly bringing in and giving and sharing information. All right, so now I'm gonna get to the storytelling. Now we're January 2018. If y'all remember, I said that's when the city said they were gonna open it up. And I don't see no little kids in here, so this is when the fuckery began, y'all. And I see the signs of it happening in New York, so I'm coming here to ring the alarm. Ring the alarm. It's happening in Chicago. It's happening everywhere where they say social equity is a priority, and they say it to get the votes. Let me say it again, y'all. Don't relax. Don't kick back. Y'all got to take this serious. So in 2018, the same thing that they said in New York, 2 for 1, 50% of the licenses will go to social equity. So in LA, for every 2 social equity applicants, they were to take on 1 general application. Now remember, I told you all about the existing medical dispensaries. So now all of a sudden, in the 11th hour, they changed the rules. Because if you go to these city council meetings, you're gonna read the changes. They put forth the amendments, they talk about it. That's why you gotta go. So the 11th hour, they change the rules, and they say, we're gonna grandfather in the medical dispensaries. Make sure y'all listening to these key words. When they start giving priority to the medical dispensaries, that's where it started at. So out of the 187 medical dispensaries that opened up, only 6 were Black. Now, mind you, the city of LA ran on a notion for legalizing cannabis, and it was to benefit social justice and social equity. Well, now all of a sudden, we are no longer a priority. So now, come March, we're sitting around waiting. In the city of LA, you have to have a property in order to apply. How can you do a premises diagram? How can you have a security plan if you don't have your property locked down? You had to turn in a lease. You had to turn in all type of information to show that you had a property. So in March 2018, I linked up with an investor. I was blessed to find a property on Crenshaw Boulevard, blocks away from where I was raised and from where I raised my children, where I had a music academy down the street. I walked these streets up and down for at least a good 45 years. So it was important. But that also made me compromise some with this multi-state operator that I partnered with. Now, this is 2018, before I knew better. So I'm sharing with you all these stories because I'm sure a lot of you will be in the same place I was then. And I thought they were doing good, and I thought they meant good, and they did. They helped out. They got this property. We're sitting here waiting for the licenses. The city keeps delaying. You see, my rent was $12,000 a month. So the first thing that happens are these predatory property owners. That property is 2,000 square feet. You do the math of the square footage, right? And so that's what we're faced with, mind you. To qualify for social equity, we're supposed to be low income, right? We don't have resources, so you just start to look at why I always said these programs are designed to fail if they don't give us access to capital. Now, I'm in this property, y'all. I actually had a 6-month window. We were able to negotiate where we paid $6,000, half the rent for 6 months, thinking that we would get licensing and be ready to operate in another 6 months. We're in September. That money is kicking over to $12,000 now. People, I know a mother and a daughter that sold their inherited home to get commercial properties. All of a sudden, it's getting serious, right? Real social equity applicants that really put their resources together, real legacy operators that really put their resources together, and we're not the straw men for investors, did not compromise and take sharecropper agreements. All of us are those you see on that picture. And Black and brown people united. We started going to every city council meeting. We went to where the mayor was at. We utilized tools, and we did use civil disobedience, and we wore equity or war, and you can see there in that definition, and I'm gonna read it, because it was sometimes taken a little like we meant it in a violent way. But we meant it in a very serious way, and it's a determined and organized effort to stop or defeat something that is viewed as dangerous or bad. And so we didn't stop. That's the other key, y'all. You only get what you fight for, especially in this industry. It's too much money at stake. At that same time, we also recognize a second piece that was very important in this process. Remember I said government relations director. So we couldn't just wear the Huey Newton hat. We also had to put on the hat of the lobbyist, right? Because really the real change happens from the pressure, but the laws change when you're back in them rooms and in City Hall, and we have to be present. And so what we did, you see on that picture, that's my dispensary, my storefront. We turned it into a community headquarters. We verified over 250 social equity applicants. We outreached to all of the neighborhoods. We came there and had meetings. And when we were educating about the health benefits of cannabis, along with the compliance and regulation, we were also preparing people to be grassroots lobbyists. 2 minutes. So September 2019 comes along, y'all. They're finally opening up. We're 2.5 years into the process. We're all excited. LA failed. It was a first come, first served process, and they let people in early. 210 people got in early. Now, mind you, we were building an army, so we had evidence. We formed the Social Equity Owners and Workers Association, a union for social equity owners and workers. We collectively raised dollar by dollar. We hired an attorney, and we filed a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles. We won the lawsuit. 3 months later, they settled for 100 additional retail licenses for social equity. So myself and 99 other people who went through it, fought like it was a war, now have the opportunity to open our doors. It made national news. And so I say, this is the blueprint, y'all. Too bad I didn't have another hour to break it down, but I will continue to speak. This is my second time coming out here because it is a great opportunity. If I knew me before I got started, it wouldn't have taken this long. And so I ask you to heed this advice because it is the foundation. Now in July 2020, after I was released from that burden, my investor dropped me because they didn't think we would win the lawsuit. Nobody did. So now I had 100% of my company back, and that's when the transfer of power came back. By that time, I knew them regulations inside and out. I could go toe-to-toe with any consultant, any lawyer. I built a team of experienced people who came that road with me and educated folks in the community for free. Now it was their reward. Raised that $1 million, kept 70% Black women-owned. And now, August 25th, as I said earlier, 1,340 days later, we opened the first Black woman-owned dispensary, Gorilla RX Wellness Co. on Crenshaw Boulevard. We call it the house that people built. We had a Black woman design it. 90% of the business are operated by Black women. And on top of that, we intend to continue Less than 3 months in, we've already hired 25 people in the community, and over $100,000 in sales tax goes back to the city. But that's the amount of impact that each of our businesses will have, so recognize your power. Social equity applicants in particular, when you're standing in front of those city council members, let them know how much money in taxes you're about to bring. The economic impact will be better than Wingstop, Subway, or any other fast food place in our community. We gotta pay taxes, so you have leverage when you're going in front of folks. So now, going back from legacy to legal, I'm looking forward to launching my product line first quarter of 2022. The beverage line will come out in the summer. Y'all look for it at Gorilla RX Wellness. And my last note, which is so critical, while I'm so willing, and please you all can reach out to me on Instagram at Big Kika, because I love to share, because we don't have time to lose. And the beauty about sharing it, I know that if I help each and every one of y'all get across that finish line, when I come back and say it's time to build a supply chain ecosystem so we're vertically integrated across this country with multiple social equity applicants and owners, that's when we can start rebuilding our communities. Blessings, y'all.